So what do you think it was from, I'm really interested in the business, right, the car business. What do you think was the main thing that you learned in that business, which you then brought are currently bringing into Help Bank to help it grow?
To help Bank grow? The biggest aspect that I learned there is people. In so many different ways. I ran that business and I had to wear all the hats, like every entrepreneur does at the start of their entrepreneurial journey. You're doing sales, you're doing marketing, you're doing cost control or analysis or credit control, and actually delivering the service as well for many years. I was actually doing the work before I actually eventually was big enough to be able to hire people to do that. But all of it is people, and business is people. So from your customers who you interact with to the employees who you have to take under your wing, or at least I did in that business, because good people doing that job were very hard to find, and even harder to retain. It was all about how you interact with people, how you make people feel comfortable and safe in what they're doing, how you get the best out of the people that are working around you, how you maintain your customers. And I said to Simon at the very, very start when we started talking about Help Bank, for the first 6 years of our business, no one ever left. I didn't get a resignation letter. There were planned exits for certain people, and certain people didn't make it, but no one ever left. No one ever was just like, I want to go and work for somebody else. And for a business to last 6 years and that be the case, that was quite a long time. And also our first customers were some of our last customers, which I think is quite rare.
Very.
So the first customer I ever got, first B2B customer I ever got, was still my customer 11 years when I sold. And I was really proud of that, because we'd maintained that relationship and we'd really, really worked on building those bridges, and those business to business customers change over time. You know, managers come and go, the politics within these companies changes, but you kind of just work with them and weather it. So yeah, all about those people. And as we bring it into Help Bank, I'm now working at the forefront of community, and it's all about people and how you turn up for them, how you make them feel, how they feel listened to, and is really important. And the earliest stages of your business, if you have someone you can soundboard against, it doesn't even necessarily have to be someone that knows a huge amount, but someone who will actively listen and actually take an interest in what you're saying, is half the battle. If you've got a sounding board that you can utilize.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's really key.
And I think it's interesting that you've been through the whole business journey as well, right? Because we were talking earlier about how you make sure people in Help Bank are good, or the right people to give information. But you've been through that, and you're leading from the front, literally in the way a good leader should, which is like, I've done this, I know exactly how you're feeling. And so I'm interested in how you knew it was the right time to sell the business, and then obviously step into, or even find Simon.
So the story of why we sold our business, there's a couple of things that happened at that period of time. Our growth trajectory within the business was pretty much just a straight line up. We were consistent in our growth every single year, and we grew at approximately 40% per year, year on year on year in terms of revenue. It was really strong. Which on a service-based business where your average job value is 50 quid is a really hard thing to do it consistently. But there is a tipping point to that, because at some point you need to have systems in place. You have to have managers who lead teams, and those sort of growing pains were something we weren't weathering particularly well. Our turnover plateaued at about 1.2 million, which was kind of like my limit of what I could manage with the teams that I got. And then we had a baby. So having a baby and running a business which was turning over £1 million and a team of, which I think was 14 at that time, and we were building a new build property as well, and managing a portfolio of other property, you almost become saturated. And it was like, well, I can continue to do this for a while, but it's probably not sustainable. And you also it becomes fairly dependent upon you. So one thing that I learned at the very early stages of my business is, if you're going to exit a business, try and exit at the top. Don't exit on the way down. And I was looking at the growth curve and I was like, well, we're beginning to plateau now. So we really need to be thinking about what's next. Either we need to really shift and change absolutely everything, structure of the teams, probably our pricing, probably our cost base, to be able to give us the margin to be able to recruit that central management, which wasn't directly contributing to revenue, or we sell. My plan was always to exit. So it got to that stage where we plateaued, got a baby, and I was like, probably a good time to do this. And when we done those like consistent 2-3 years at that same turnover, it literally went up, and it stopped when Charlotte was born and like literally leveled off. I was like, now's a good time to go, because the only time probably from here, that line's probably going to go down, and then it becomes less valuable. So we made the decision to exit at that point, and it was exceptionally good timing. So
why?
We planned to sell the business for about a year and a half, but my last day at work for the business was 29th of February 2020, and the world wasn't doing so great about 2 weeks later.
Yeah, it was doing absolutely terribly. So I think Simon Scribb has described you as the luckiest man in business, right? The luckiest sale in that year, at least.
The timing of the sale was incredibly lucky, and it's actually how I met Simon. So a mutual friend introduced us because he was doing a podcast on Clubhouse called Luck in Business, and he called me up on that podcast to talk about the luck of the timing of that sale. And it was lucky. We had no idea that there was going to be a pandemic, and that's not why we were selling. But that business wasn't there 6 months later, because the customer base simply wasn't accessible anymore. No. You couldn't see them. So the business wasn't there.
So that was how you introduced to Simon. Obviously that story, I guess, resonated quite well.
Yeah.
And from there, the rest is history, right? You've gone into Help Bank, and you've got all these people who you're working with and for and helping, and it's all a bit exciting.
Yeah, Simon and I stayed friends, right? So Help Bank wasn't born for another 2 and a bit years after that, but we kept in touch, and our kids were about the same age. We used to hang out and go for walks on the Common in London. We used to go around to the house and have barbecues. The kids would play. There was no preconception there. There was no, I want to get into business with this guy. It was just a friendship. And about 2.5 years later, he was just like, I'm putting a few people together. We're building this thing called Help Bank where we're going to help at scale. I'd been helping a bit here and there in the ecosystem. He was like, do you want to invest? I was like, yep.
Yeah,
it's a real no-brainer at that point as well.
Yeah.
So
I've heard you talk, actually I've read some of the stuff you've said in the past, and one of the things you've said which I really like is about this notion of building smart, right? And I'm just interested in what that actually looks like today. When you're talking to people who are looking for help in Help Bank, how would you define someone or help someone to build smart rather than whatever the alternative might be?
So I guess building smart is the opposite of just working really, really hard at a bunch of stuff. I think, again, it comes down to the access to information, the ability to focus on what you're really good at, identify the things that you're not, and then outsource the things that you can outsource. Focus on the mission, focus on the key things that drive either revenue, if that's what you're really after, or community generation, or whatever it is that's really key to the business. And then be able to push out those other roles to other areas. Because you can hire people in all parts of the world in a way in which you couldn't do before. Access to talent has never been easier, in the same way that access to information is so ubiquitous now. But being really, really smart about where you focus your time, what you spend your time on, and what really moves the needle is something that also can be learnt. There's plenty of content out there that will show you how to do these things.
Yeah, absolutely, right. Like we keep coming back to, information is so cheap these days, but it's finding the bits that are going to help you at the right time, which is why I guess accountability has become so valuable and expensive in many ways.
Yeah.
So when someone asks you, what should I be working on now, or what should I be trying to do in my business, what would you say the traits are between the ones who become successful from the people you work with and the ones that perhaps aren't as successful?
There are a number of traits that people will talk about that make successful entrepreneurs. the one thing that we talk about a lot is personal accountability. So being able to be accountable for your actions, looking a little bit internally and saying, okay, well, I'm not good at this, I am good at that. And when you've made a mistake, own it. It's a really key part. It's something that we value hugely internally in both Simon's brand and ours. And I think that being able to take that personal accountability of all of the actions that you take within your business and say, okay, well, I made a mistake there, I'm going to rectify it. I'm going to rectify it like this because I'm learning. You can make the same mistake twice, but you need to learn. That's one of the key traits, I think, when it comes down to... I've made so many mistakes across all aspects of all of the businesses that I've run. So many mistakes. But the point is you have to learn from each of them and try not to make them again.
Yeah.